Hi everyone, it's noon, so we're going to get started. My name is Ellen Stewart, and I wanted to welcome you to this AgilePath webinar on the next generation IT architecture. Our speakers this afternoon are Eric Marks, President and CEO of AgilePath, and Kevin King, Director of West Coast Operations for AgilePath. Eric Marks is an internationally recognized technology expert and the author of 6 IT strategy books, most recently The Executive's Guide to Cloud Computing. Kevin is the Director of West Coast Operations for AgilePath. His team focuses on the delivery of key customer engagements in both the private sector and public sector. Before we get started, I want to let you know that attendees will be receiving, after the webinar, you'll get a link to the recording, and you can also go online and download the webinar that is the companion to, the white paper that's a companion to this webinar, the IT Platform of the Future. We'll be taking questions at the end of the webinar, so as you think of questions, go ahead and use your GoToWebinar panel to send them in, and we'll try to answer as many as possible at the end of the presentation.
Let's go ahead and get started. Apologize, folks, for the lack of communication. So let's get started. The topic is next generation IT architecture. This is a very interesting look at the 4 mega technology trends that are driving enterprise behavior, adoption, enterprise architecture, and more importantly, business strategy in today's market. Today we'll talk about these 4 technologies and try and give you a sense of some options, choices, and tactics you can start to apply to your organizations as you think about cloud computing and big data and social technologies and mobile technologies. So introduction-wise, this next generation IT architecture offers really a compelling opportunity to transform an enterprise business model. It's not just an IT thing. These technologies and capabilities offer real opportunities to change your revenue model, change and enhance productivity, to engage with customers and markets in ways we haven't been able to do so before. That said, the same capabilities in this next generation architecture have the ability to transform your enterprise IT architecture. As we'll explain deeper into the deck, we feel that there's at least 4 dimensions of 10x productivity and value in this architecture if you embrace it. But the downside is that there's just as much risk if you choose to ignore it or don't try and exploit it on behalf of your customers' employees. So that's the setup for where we're going in this journey. This next-gen architecture we're describing is really being driven by big IT trends, big trends in the marketplace. Bring your own device is very popular today as employees bring their own devices to work. They want to be able to use those and connect into the enterprise in a secure, reliable, trusted fashion. And the question is, to what extent does the enterprise allow or enable someone to bring their own device and engage just as if it's a company-owned device? It's interesting that this is now an industry-wide trend. This is something that AgilePath has been doing internally for some time. We just didn't know how far ahead of the curve we were. A related trend is the second bullet. This comes actually from a Cognizant white paper that I heard Malcolm Frank talk about. And what they describe is the transition from Sunday at home to Monday at work. And in their view, and I share this perspective, why should the fundamental user experience that you enjoy at home on Sunday become so dramatically boring and sterile as it is on Monday when you're at work using work-provided tools? So the idea is, how can you use a BYOD strategy and expose a set of capabilities such that your Sunday to Monday experience is virtually identical? This leads into supporting trends that go along with this. The consumerization of IT. The fact is that enterprise technologies today are not being innovated by the enterprise solution providers of the past, like IBM and Oracle and SAP. They're being innovated by firms like LinkedIn and Facebook and Apple and companies like that. And so this consumerization trend of cell phones, smartphones, tablets, etc., all the innovations are coming out of consumer marketing. They're not coming from traditional enterprise IT suppliers. This is having a dramatic impact on the way that organizations deal with new technology trends and the adoption of those. Going along with this is what we call the democratization of IT. Access to consumption of and governance of IT resources is being done today in a much more democratic, egalitarian, self-service kind of a model. So today, it's not just the executives and the VP slots and higher get the new cool stuff. Everybody is demanding it. So democratization of IT is just paving the way for everybody to have the same rich user experience, not just the executives of a given enterprise. The next one is the fact that the millennial workforce of today and the millennial customer base are going to have a traumatic impact on the way organizations do business. The millennials are all the young guns coming up that are digital natives and that know nothing but sharing things on the web, using their smartphones. Millennials are going to change how business happens. And it's a two-pronged, at least, kind of a problem or opportunity if you choose to look at it that way. Your millennial workforce is going to change how you work, distributed, collaborative, using the web and other smartphone technologies and mobile technologies. They're demanding that. You won't be able to hire a millennial workforce unless you offer the ways for them to interact with you as employees. At the same time, millennial customers are increasingly shaping the way that goods and services are provided and consumed. And increasingly, the enterprise has to think about the demographics of change and what it means to start to address the millennials both as a workforce and as future or current customers. Lastly, the whole idea of trust-based consumption is really interesting. As we talk about democratization of IT and consumerization of IT and BYOD kinds of ideas, what we're really talking about is extreme self-service, self-provisioning, self-governance, or again what I call trust-based consumption. Increasingly, you're going to secure things and make them available within the enterprise, and you're going to have to trust your employees and workforce that they know what to consume, how to consume it, and will do it on their own. And that puts some pressures on the enterprise to securely provide access to services and capabilities. But you're also extending trust to that workforce that they're going to behave appropriately in using those resources. So that's a snapshot of some pretty big things that are impacting the way IT is being done today. Continuing on, a few more of these that are quite interesting. In my cloud book, most recently, I described the rise of the RDACs. RDAC just means Remote Distributed Anonymous Collaborators. And increasingly, that is the work style of many startup businesses today, of many distributed corporations, of different work patterns in a large enterprise. Many times, there's a collaboration happening within a company with people that have never met face-to-face. So we're Skyping, we're connecting, we're collaborating using collaborative tools, but the effectiveness of work is still high because A, the workforce is used to working that way, and B, the tools and technologies make it a very viable way to do complex process interactions and collaborations using the appropriate tools and technologies. So the rise of the RDACs is somewhat concomitant with the millennial workforce. The next two are somewhat related. I call it the appification of IT, and it's that old, the mobile technology trend of today. Every time I hear a new idea, I say to myself, there's got to be an app for that, and I immediately go hit the Google App Store or the Apple App Store and find out, is there really an app for that idea? So the appification of IT is really taking an enterprise view of that and trying to seek ways in which you can, mobile app enable some enterprise capabilities to make them easy to use, make the information easy to consume, make them able to support to support a mobile and distributed workforce that uses social mechanisms to engage. The IT-tainment idea is that entertainment technology is increasingly being embedded in IT capabilities. So I use the word IT-tainment, but it's entertainment technology, gaming, gamification of things, which is a made-up word, of course. But the whole idea of using rich media and rich content to create an entertaining way to do work is a different way of looking at it, rather than, again, old crusty green screens that have crusty mainframe technologies behind the scenes. So these are all things that are being looked at as ways to make it easier to do work, enhance productivity, but also make it more fun and interesting to engage with the workforce and with customers. The next one is a bigger issue, and we're talking here about the transition of IT, of the information technology organization, into a business service broker. With the advent and with the rapid adoption of cloud computing and other sorts of capabilities, IT is being forced to get proactive and develop the broker relationships and contracts with many external service providers, but broker them to the business customers seamlessly as if they're internal IT capabilities. And so this business service broker concept has implications for an IT organization that sometimes in today's environment feels a little threatened by Amazon, by different platform as a service vendors and other third-party service providers. So there's some implications for IT there. And lastly, one of my favorites is the benchmark of today's service. When someone asks me to define cloud computing, I say cloud computing is 5 minutes. That's what cloud computing is. Cloud computing, to me, says that if I need a virtualized data center, or I need some infrastructure to do some development, or if I need a J2EE platform as a service, I should be able to find one, evaluate it, sign up for an account, give a credit card, and be fully functional in 5 minutes. That's as long as it should take. That's how long it takes to search for an app in my mobile device. That's how long it should take to do lots of things. The problem is, that's to a millennial the standard of how long it should take to do things. That's going to put increasing pressure on IT organizations to do business at the speed of cloud computing, or at cloud speed, as I like to say, not the ones that move across the sky, but you get the picture. So those are some big trends in IT today. Let me take a pause for a second and ask if my co-presenter is online. And I'm guessing not, so I'm going to continue. This slide was adapted from a Washington Post column on August 16, 2011. And it was an article that talked about the 4 titans of technology, those, of course, being Apple, Google, Amazon, and Facebook. And this picture just talks about the different technologies and capabilities that each of them is providing and how they're intersecting to change the way that technology is being done. I took that article from the Washington Post and I showed it to several IT executives in the public sector space and in the commercial space, and I said, hey, what do you think about this picture? And every one of them to the letter said, that's what I want in my organization. I want that. Now that was, of course, a little open-ended. What is that exactly? And of course, the bumper sticker at the bottom of this says, if you want that, how the heck do you govern that? And that's also a challenge. So the 4 titans of technology are causing headaches in today's IT environment. People are adopting those technologies aggressively, yet they have to figure out how to make them enterprise capable. This slide the numbers are dated, but the message is still the same. Those 4 titans of technology on the left surpassed in a market capitalization evaluation the total market capitalization of IBM, Oracle, SAP, and Microsoft. And this was a very interesting phenomenon to see that these guys not only are driving many of the new technology trends at the enterprise level, but their valuation in the marketplace has surpassed what I'll call the old guard. They're still obviously very powerful companies, but they're not perceived as trendsetters of technology today. So these four titans are driving these four big IT megatrends to the hilt into corporate and public sector America today. It's social media, it's mobile, it's cloud computing, it's big data, and of course there's a few others that go along with it. But these are the four megatrends that are part of and help comprise the IT architecture of the future. Now let me go back to my Washington Post picture, and what I've done is I've expanded this to include the four technology megatrends up top, and I'm highlighting here a couple of challenges that should be called out. On the left, of course, the challenge is dealing in the continuum from consumer technology to enterprise technology, and in that continuum is a lot of challenge and a lot of risk with security, with reliability, with enterprise class technologies, those kinds of things. On the right of this picture, of course, hits the governance and security challenges that go with this thing, and how do you govern the adoption of and insertion of these kinds of capabilities. And lastly, the bottom talks about just some foundational enabling capabilities that go along with this architecture, like cybersecurity, behavioral analytics, data science, some of those kinds of ideas. So going forward, the challenges of this model are, again, navigating that enterprise consumer continuum, trying to find the balance between governance and security, which is more or less kind of a control-oriented issue, versus enabling and engaging with your customers and suppliers and even with employees, which is kind of the open access thing. So there's always a tension between giving people access into capability, but also governing and securing those capabilities to prevent risk. The third bullet here is very interesting, and we hinted toward it before. It's how do you obtain and architect and insert enterprise class capabilities from consumer technology companies that haven't typically been good at providing enterprise IT capable systems and solutions. So in some cases, this was sort of presaged by BlackBerry. BlackBerry had a secure model for doing corporate email at the time. The other platforms didn't, and now, of course, we know the story of BlackBerry. But they at least had an enterprise secure model for doing mobile email, which overcame some of the issues around governance and security. The last bullet here is, of course, important. How do you integrate these into your existing legacy enterprise, legacy application portfolio, et cetera, without breaking it? So this next-gen architecture comes with some challenges. Now, along with the challenges comes opportunity. And we've identified 4 dimensions of what we're calling 10x gains that come along with this new architecture. First of all, there's a significant 10x productivity gain opportunity. If you re-engineer different sales and internal business processes over the new IT stack that's comprised of cloud, big data, social, mobile, what you're going to find is massive opportunities to gain productivity and drive different work patterns for your workforce using these kinds of tools. Now, we're early, of course, in the adoption of this, and so this 10x productivity gain is somewhat a guess, but I remain convinced there's at least that kind of a productivity gain if you look at various business processes and re-engineer them over this new IT stack. On the cost reduction side, clearly there's an opportunity to get benefits efficiencies by variabilizing what have traditionally been fixed costs like data center and compute infrastructure and those kinds of things, and of course, to keep the lights on costs, so to speak. But there are amazing cost reductions to be had if you exploit this architecture not only just from a pure cloud computing perspective, but again, you can virtualize your workforce, implement flex work and work at home programs, which reduce overhead as well. So there's some opportunity there. The next two are very exciting to me. 10x both in customer engagement and 10x in employee engagement. I mean, today's customers, again, playing on the millennial theme, are going to engage more readily with organizations that cater to them through social and mobile technologies. And they're going to get more loyalty. You'll get more customer referrals by those very same engagement channels. So customer engagement and customer referrals and customer loyalty will be enhanced by these new technologies, particularly social mobile. But I should emphasize that if you don't satisfy your customers, it's real easy to do a negative blast or a negative tweet or do a blog, and suddenly things aren't so rosy for you. So just as fast as you can engage to grow your market, you can also do harm if you don't have good, reliable processes for ensuring customer satisfaction. And lastly, employee engagement. Today's workforce wants to use social tools, mobile technologies, some of the capabilities that we're talking about in this next-gen architecture. You're going to need those kinds of capabilities to recruit your new workforce and the workforce of the future. You're going to need these kinds of capabilities and engagement models to retain that workforce of the future. So, given these opportunities, what is your opportunity to exploit this next-gen IT architecture in your business? Something to think about. So, without further ado, this is a picture of the next-gen IT architecture. I'm not going to go into every box and every capability, but at a high level, it has 4 pieces to it, working top-down. There's what we call the enterprise engagement architecture. The engagement architecture includes social computing, mobile technology, things like app stores and other kinds of enablers that allow you to engage with customers, partners, employees. That's why it's called the engagement architecture. I have, of course, the Facebook logo and the Apple logo there, symbolic of those capabilities. Next down is the advanced analytics and data architecture. This was added more recently in a newer version of this because it occurred to us that with all the big data hype and with some of these new advanced analytic tools that are available in the marketplace, organizations are trying to become more knowledge-centric, and analytics and big data are part of that. So I actually put in a advanced analytics and data architecture piece because it's important. Next is the next-gen integration services architecture, and what we're talking about is in order to accommodate these big technology megatrends in IT, organizations have to rethink their integration strategies and their integration services approaches. SOA was one of those big ones, still is. API management is kind of the new buzzword for those kinds of ideas. How do you do integration in a way that enables these technologies to be incorporated and also allows you to transform into this kind of a 2B architecture? Finally, the what we call the enterprise enablement architecture. So this is encapsulated by cloud computing and big data. Of course, Amazon, Google. I have Hadoop there just as a typical vendor there. Those are the things that are enabling this architecture to come forward, so that you can layer on social and mobile and analytic tools over the top of that. So that's the next-gen IT architecture in a nutshell. And of course, on the far right-hand side, you can see security and governance are not lost in this architecture. And again, those are separate webinars in and of their own right. Let's go forward and decompose this architecture. So unpacking it, these are the 4 components we talked about. The engagement architecture, which of course is mobile, social, app stores, service catalogs, potentially integrated platforms as a service, those kinds of ideas. Advanced analytics and data architecture starts to encompass big data, cloud BI, data science, things that are used to generate insights and new ahas based on existing and future data. The enablement architecture clearly talks about cloud, big data, and enterprise mobile enablement from an architecture perspective, mobile cloud integration, those kinds of ideas. And lastly, but certainly not least, the integration services architecture, which again I've sort of talked about as next-gen service-oriented architecture, or ubiquitous services integration, if you want to think about it like that. We'll go into each of these in detail in the sections that follow. So, engagement architecture. Again, focus here is engagement with customers, partners, employees, etc. The focus of the engagement architecture is really to enable a multifaceted, multi-channel engagement with customers, with influencers, with the social networks of customers, with employees, industry analysts, and more. So these are the things that you're looking at as you're looking at social and mobile technologies and how you can use those to create new interaction patterns with the people that directly buy from you or the people that influence who directly buys from you. So from an interaction pattern perspective, obviously we want to leverage social communities, social networks, and different interaction modes with millennials at the core of this. And the emphasis therefore becomes connectivity and functionality for mobile devices and in support of BYOD. How do you connect and engage with different social networks? And how do you start to expose apps in a mobile sense that address there's got to be an app for that kind of an idea. And of course, this is only tip of the iceberg. There's many ways in which you can imagine how you would design an engagement architecture to work with the various stakeholders in this model. This picture clearly shows that we're talking about customers, employees, partners, suppliers, and others. And notionally, again, there's there's LinkedIn, there's Facebook, there's Google+, there's Amazon, YouTube, SlideShare, yada, yada, yada. There's all kinds of ways that this engagement architecture can be brought to life using both social means, but also providing functionality and capabilities through various types of mobile platforms and mobile devices. So this puts pressure to imagine business processes, sales processes, marketing activities that can be inherently driven by this engagement architecture. And then, the question is, what do you do with legacy applications and data to make them participate in this kind of a model? So, there's a few action items that we would suggest that you need to begin doing if you haven't already. First and foremost is develop both an enterprise mobile strategy and a mobile architecture that enables that. Second, develop a social media strategy and a supporting architecture. And then look at, thirdly, what is the integration model and framework to let you expose data, applications, and capabilities out of your current legacy application portfolio and out of your current enterprise architecture such that you can start to drive your business, revenue, operating model, and IT organization based on the use of these kinds of tools and technologies. And the last thing on this slide here is suggesting that you model the enterprise impact of these different engagement modes and see if you can wrap the value proposition and the revenue and operational impact of these things on your enterprise. It's not going to be the same for everybody, but you should be able to model the impact of these things and figure it out both from a revenue, market presence perspective, but also from an operational efficiency, cost savings perspective. Next is the advanced analytics and data architecture piece. This is partly driven by the aha that's coming with big data, and again with some of these next generation analytics tools out there. Today's enterprises are increasingly they're obsessed with data and analytics and information. Big data is part of this trend, but big data doesn't reflect the true scope of this challenge and this opportunity. Analytics and data architectures are undergoing a fundamental transformation based on leveraging new sources of data to create insights, to generate knowledge, to learn things about your enterprise and your business model that you weren't able to know before because you didn't have access to data that you've already been collecting, or you didn't have a way to exploit that data. So in many respects, traditional data architectures that we've been using for the last 15 years and traditional structured analytic models are completely insufficient for today's agile analytics and marketplace and mindset. The bumper sticker at the bottom offers up the idea of a knowledge-oriented architecture, which I don't know if anybody else has used that before. I just pulled it out for the bumper sticker, but in a way, we're talking about a different type of data and analytics architecture that's organized around generating insights, creating knowledge that drives a business model. And that may be something that is top of mind for some organizations. If I think about challenges and requirements of the advanced analytic and data architecture space, it's looking at the next generation of natively cloud-enabled BI tools. These capabilities we've been working with and doing research on recently, and I'm telling you what, I don't know how many on the phone have spent 2 years on a data warehousing project, but I can tell you right now, that's not going to be acceptable anymore. And if I were to tell you that with the right tools and the right opportunity, that we could get a fully built data warehouse, ETL infrastructure, and operational BI analytics in place in 6 to 8 weeks, what would you do? You'd probably say yes. The second bullet here talks about analytic integration, and here is the opportunity of leveraging structured data in the traditional BI analytics mode, but coupling it with semi-structured, unstructured, and streaming analytics so that you've got an integrated paradigm of dealing with all kinds of data types and generating knowledge, insights, and value from them. Now, that's not going to be easy. That's an emerging paradigm, but one that we're paying very close attention to, and in some cases, we're helping clients get there. This all is underpinned by ideas around data virtualization and data integration, and there are going to be challenges in some organizations with how do you federate and virtualize data of different data types across a legacy set of apps, and so this is going to continue to be a really important part of enabling this advanced analytics data architecture. The next bullet really talks about the pace of adoption of unstructured data analytics, NoSQL, and semi-structured kinds of tools, and the adoption of these is outpacing structured SQL-centric stuff today. So I really see a big change in the way that data is thought of, stored, modeled, and leveraged. It's not going to be the way we've thought about it in the past. Data science is one of the hottest fields today. So how do you get a data science practice and center of excellence built up so you can start to operate using that? And lastly, the last two on this page, is there going to be a different kind of an architecture paradigm that goes with unstructured? What does that look like? Is it a related architecture to your enterprise data architecture? How do you do data architecture for unstructured stuff? And lastly, on the bottom, data governance is going to be a big pressure point here because you're going to have to govern data volumes, retention of data, storage, because you don't want to drive your storage costs up as the data volumes explode. So you're going to have to think through your data governance model to go along with this kind of a operational model. So action items here, 3 of them. Rethink your BI and analytics framework, working from an analyst requirement to the back-end architecture. Don't look at it from integration, data warehouse, ETL forward. That's not going to get you there. All the new cloud-based BI tools are working from analytic functionality to the back, and they're going to totally transform the BI space. We think you should transform your entire data architecture and storage infrastructure to harness the power of unstructured, semi-structured, and other data sources that you've not been able to use before. And we urge you to examine how deeply the relational bias is in your organization, because I've thought in the past that way as well. We almost always look relational at things, but in fact, you can get more value and interesting value if you start to look at unstructured and semi-structured models, and then use relational when you need to. So again, we're suggesting look for ways to create business insights using some kind of a knowledge-oriented architecture construct. Shifting forward, cloud computing. We all are paying attention to it. Many of you are already doing it. It has to be part of your IT strategy today. There's no way around it. The economics, the agility, and time to market are too important to ignore. If you have concerns about public resources, private clouds have their own value propositions as well, while delivering internal optimization and value. And you know, we recognize cloud's an overloaded term, but for almost every organization, I can use the reference model to the right on this graphic and find a powerful value proposition for cloud that would overcome objections from the business or from the IT security people. So it has to be part of your strategy. You know, clearly, you know, infrastructure as a service is moving rapidly. The API battles are happening. Software as a service is here. Platform as a service is catching up. Cloud management, template orchestration are on the rise. Cloud governance is critical now. And you know, legacy portfolio modernization is certainly you know, being looked at to, you know, what do I decide to migrate to the cloud and how? So you know, that's the cloud stuff. I would argue that there's 3 pillars of success in this cloud computing lane: cloud governance, cloud management, and a leadership model. So you know, these are things to think about as you go forward, and you know, think about how you govern this early before you start adopting. Think about the management processes and tools, and have a leadership vision for what cloud means to your organization. Now, I'd like to take a pause for a moment. We have something interesting cooked up for you guys today, and I want to do a push poll to take a pause for a minute. And the poll basically is looking at how many of these IT megatrend technologies are you using in your enterprise. So support team, do you want to do the push poll now for the attendees? So there you can see it. The poll is open, and so if you'll take a few minutes to you know, answer those questions and respond, and then we'll be able to share those results with you. And once we do that for a few minutes, then I'll carry on with the presentation. So again, the poll question is, you know, what of these next-gen technologies are you using in your enterprise? Are you using social, mobile, big data, cloud, SOA integration capabilities? So if you just you know, take another 30 seconds or a minute to answer that, and then we'll push the results. And I have a little notification thing on my screen that tells me that the poll's open, and then as soon as the poll's closed, the results are generated out real time for the audience. And the poll results are now being shared. So can somebody, because I can't see them, can somebody enumerate or summarize what we're seeing from those poll results?
Yep, Eric, so we've got 85% answered that they're using cloud computing, 54% are using big data, 54% are using social media, 69% are using mobile technologies, and 8% answered none. Wow, that's a serious, a lot of adoption of those technologies, and I guess I'm not surprised by that. The next question I would be curious about is it you know, enterprise-wide? Is it pockets of proof of concepts? How far down the maturity curve for each of these are people? But that's a question for another day. So let's continue on with the rest of the webinar. Thank you for responding to that little poll. The next piece of the enablement architecture talks about, of course, my friend, big data. And what is big data? It's, I've got a series of quotes here, which I won't read to you, but there's a Wikipedia quote, an Amazon quote, an IBM quote, a Gartner quote. But it really just tries to give you some sound bites around what is big data and what does it mean when we're talking about big data.
And the bumper sticker at the bottom, I will summarize. It's the size, structure, and value of data are different with big data. Big data is going to continue to challenge what I call relational biases toward data architecture, toward data management, analytics, and storage, of course, and finally data governance. But you know it's big data if it's way, way big, like terabytes, petabytes. You know it's big data if it's coming at you really fast and high volumes. It starts to feel like big data if you're addressing non-traditional data formats and mashing them together. Those are things that start to feel like big data to me. So big data offers some big opportunity for organizations that go after it. It provides unique business insights beyond the traditional data that you would be analyzing from your traditional transactional systems. Every organization can benefit from expanding their analytic funnel beyond the structured stuff that we're used to looking at today, and starting to look at, again, merging non-traditional data sets with data you've got in the enterprise to see what you come up with. There's all kinds of unique and interesting possibilities. There are just too many to name here, and because this is such a new and emerging technology, this is going to be a really dynamic space for years to come. You can exploit and extract value from data that you probably in many cases always had available to you but didn't have the tools or the ability to store it and run analytics over it. So that's, again, getting value from data that you've always had but didn't know what to do with. And, of course, combining data in different formats to find nuggets of insight and knowledge. So if you use big data in tandem with some of the advanced analytic ideas earlier, you're going to have an opportunity for a paradigm shift from traditional data analysis and data architecture, and again, pave the way toward the realization of, again, what I've nicknamed some kind of a knowledge-oriented architecture that's explicitly based on driving insights with data that you haven't been able to get to before. So here's, again, a slide of what makes it big data. And again, there's 4 V's that you'll see out there that talk about what makes it big data. It's the volume of data, which again is terabytes, petabytes, or more. It's the velocity of data. Think about a jet engine monitoring system. How much data would come off of something at that velocity? The variety of data, and of course the rate of data type or format change. And lastly, the value. It's again the idea that there's big value in harvesting ideas from data that you either were not able to access before or weren't able to analyze in combination with other structured data that you've had. So some action items on the enablement architecture, which is a combined slide focused on cloud and big data. It's develop strategies formally for these if you haven't already, and understand the touch points between these very closely related paradigms. We urge you to figure out where cloud can enhance business agility while reducing costs. But we also urge you to think about the idea of a knowledge-oriented architecture and how you might start to transform your organization into a data-oriented enterprise or knowledge-oriented enterprise, or pick the word you want to use to describe it. Those are some takeaways there. Lastly, the next-gen integration services. Again, as I said earlier to start this, the adoption of this next-gen IT architecture is going to force you to look at your IT integration process with a new set of eyes. System integration, application integration, data process, even cloud integration now is a problem in some of our clients. You've got to look at all of this now and figure out how to meld them into a fabric of capabilities that enables social, mobile, and other access to your data and to business services within your enterprise. SOA and API management, data virtualization, and data architecture are going to become the basis for this set of next-generation integration services. And again, the intent is that you're going to create new modes of access and collaboration while you're also enabling citizen developers and while you're also driving enhanced IT productivity internal to your enterprise. So I look at this and I say, how do I turn my enterprise inside out in support of an engagement architecture that's based on mobile and social means? How do I invert my enterprise? Now, this slide from Gartner, which I won't read, but it just basically talks about the fact that integration services, according to Gartner, are going strategic, and it's a question of how do you integrate applications to applications, B2B, cloud integration, as I mentioned before. The integration space is becoming less of a how do I fix something that isn't working well to how do I strategically integrate to enable a new future. And that new future, I submit to you, is represented by this next-gen architecture. So this picture here is a variation of the next-gen architecture looking at enterprise inversion. And the question is, how do you turn your legacy application portfolio inside out and expose a set of data and application services via enterprise APIs that can be consumed via mobile apps and social mechanisms and social media, can be exposed through a service catalog in an app store so that internal developers can access them, so that customers and partners can access them, so on and so forth. That's the challenge of the integration space today. So enterprise inversion, how do I turn the enterprise inside out to drive maximum engagement? How do I transform legacy apps and data into a portfolio of integration services and APIs so that externally facing services can be accessed by trading partners and the customers and others? Internally facing services can be used to support internal integration, internal transformation, internal application modernization. That's the space. So the other idea that goes along with this is, the whole next-gen service-oriented architecture idea is in support of appification of the enterprise. So if I start to expose everything as APIs and as services that'll be accessible for this next-gen IT architecture, it's a question of, is the traditional view of SOA and the current view of API management enough, or do I have to envision a different model of service-oriented architecture that will enable this? And I'm not going to give you the answer here because I don't know how it's going to shake out. All I do know is our SOA business has been growing as a result of the adoption of these kinds of technologies. And my theory is that these are putting pressure on the integration strategies that we've been employing, such that we've got to look at ways to virtualize data, create a set of enterprise APIs and external services so that we can develop this engagement architecture. So this next-gen slide here talks about exposing services and APIs for all capabilities, all apps, all data. The theory here is any interface or API that generates consumption and engagement with customers and partners is good. So we want to make sure that we can support all the access patterns and services using this next-gen integration services strategy. The bumper sticker at the bottom, of course, says SOA management, API management, cloud management tools have to converge to enable this next-gen architecture. We can't have silos of management tools for each of these different technology lanes. We need an integrated view of these kinds of management technologies. So finally, how do you meet the challenges of the next-gen IT architecture? So these are some things to do tomorrow or later today if your calendar allows. We urge you to develop a next-gen IT architecture roadmap that will enable a next-gen business strategy to come to life. So it's not just a strategy for the individual slices of this. It's how do you create an IT architecture roadmap that will lead you along this path to an integrated view of cloud, big data, analytics, social, and mobile with a set of integration capabilities in the middle. How do you implement, and we urge you to implement the next-gen IT architecture using small proof of concepts, agile sprints, pilots, and controlled experiments. It'd be foolish to try and take on that whole picture at once. So as you develop this roadmap, think about the areas where you need to get cycles of learning accelerated, de-risk the adoption of some of these things, and so that's going to be done best by agile sprints and pilots and proof of concepts. Another idea, given that this whole framework is very millennial-centric, is to harness your millennial workforce into a set of people that can help evaluate, define, and prove some of these kinds of capabilities from an engagement architecture perspective. You've got them in your workforce now. You've got millennial customers. Create some kind of a forum to harness them into this strategy and into helping you start to provide and offer capabilities that map into this architecture. Next, transform your organization into a knowledge-oriented enterprise, or implement some version of a knowledge-oriented architecture that leverages big data and next-gen analytics. Turn your data into a weapon rather than just doing data things the way you've always done it. There's opportunity there that is untapped. We have no idea where this is going to end up, but I remain convinced that there's a new vista of opportunity around knowledge assets in an organization. Finally, and probably most importantly, is partner with the business. If you partner with the business, you can do this as a joint business IT strategy that exploits these forces of change so that you can reimagine the business model and then re-architect the IT strategy and enterprise architecture in support of that. So if you can find the ways to partner with the business to bring this to life, we feel that you're going to be better postured for success. At any rate, act now is the call to action to harness the power of this next-gen architecture. It's too important, too strategic, and while the push-pull says you're all doing it, I think the change here is that we would urge you to do it in an integrated fashion. So that's the end of the structured content, and what we'd like to do now is take questions. I was supposed to remind you to use the question box in the webinar panel. You can type in your questions there, and we'll answer them, and we'll be able to do about 5 minutes or so of Q&A before we close the webinar. So let me throw it over to the moderators to bring the questions forward.
Yeah, so I think we may have time for 1 or 2 questions. We have a good one that came in, and it says, may you elaborate some more on the end of 2-year data warehouse on the end of the 2-year data warehouse project? How do you envision companies taking complicated extraction, transformation, and loading of data into data warehouses? Are you saying that the cloud will replace this, and if so, may you provide some real-world examples?
I love that question. So the answer is we've been looking at a variety of the new cloud-native analytic tools, and there's a few of them out there that we know of. One is, for example, Burst. But these are all tools that are built for the cloud natively, and they're built from a set of analytic capabilities to the back with a fully native integrated code base. So, for example, a lot of the big BI and analytics stacks from the usual vendors are tools that they've integrated together and brought together through mergers and acquisitions. So the ETL tools don't necessarily work as smoothly with the data virtualization tools as they do with the ODS and the data warehousing platform or the reporting and analytics engine on the top. So these tools, the next generation of what I'm calling cloud-enabled BI, are cloud-native integrated code bases that allow you to just point them toward the data sources, suck in the data, do the cross-referencing of the keys, generate the star schema, and basically the ETL and data warehouse generation is automated. So I'm telling you that there are ways to do this now where I can get a live data warehouse in 6 to 8 weeks, not 2 years. And you can do these in conjunction with your traditional BI model, but I definitely am seeing the end of the 2-year data warehouse. Also, think about things like Amazon Redshift, a virtual data warehouse in the cloud where, I can turn on a data warehouse and going back to my 5-minute metaphor. So watch for these opportunities, but there's current people we're talking with. They're in the middle of these kinds of data warehousing projects, and I keep asking, why? Why do it? Because there's a better way. Next question.
All right, so we just probably have time for one more, and then we're going to have to wrap up. But we will maybe address some of these questions in a blog post coming up, and you can certainly reach us by email. So last question is, as you mentioned, there has been much discussion around cloud. Many architects in health are pointing out that they would need to have a so-called private cloud for security and privacy issues. What is the distinction between a private cloud and a remote server model?
Gosh, I'm going to answer that this way. Clearly, private cloud is on-premise. It's your own servers, your own cloud implementation of some cloud stack, if you will. The remote server model, I'm guessing, as a set of servers that are managed by, as a managed service by a third-party service provider. And the question is, in the remote server model, are those just server capacity being managed by somebody, or are those remote servers also under a cloud implementation where they can be virtualized as a homogeneous resource pool? So I don't know the context of the question. It feels like it's something in that the way that I've answered it. But a private cloud, of course, gives you all the benefits and features of cloud, fast provisioning, a resource pool that's shared, virtualized, etc. Remote servers, if they're cloud enabled with some kind of a cloud stack, would behave like a cloud. You'd get the same benefits as a private cloud. But if it's just remote servers and it's just VMs or server capacity that you're accessing through a managed service provider, they may not have the behavior of a cloud resource pool that you're looking for. So I think that's the answer for that question.
All right, great. So we are out of time. I'd like to take this time to thank all of you for dialing in today. And if you asked a question that we weren't able to get to, you can email us at info@agile-path.com. Thanks again for attending this AgilePath webinar, and I hope you all have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, very much.